Hello and welcome back to Life's Biggest Questions. I'm Ron Mackenzie Lafergie. Humanity has been pretty obsessed with zombies for decades. Countless films, shows, novels, and comics have been created on the subject and delve into what would happen in a world of zombies. And now it's our turn. If you like this video, head over to Top 10 Nerd. It's a sister channel hosted by myself and a couple nerdy ladies, and you can find all sorts of nerdy videos on anything from comic books to Harry Potter to Star Wars. Now get ready, it's time to ask the question, what if The Walking Dead was real? First of all, there would be a significant change to how death was dealt with. Death would be far more common. In a world of such danger, where humanity is once again cast into the role of prey, survivors would need to learn to accept death as a normal part of life. Unexpected death would once again be a relatively common occurrence, and not just at the hands of the zombies. Disease would also be a huge problem. With little to no access to medicine or medical professionals, even diseases that are considered relatively innocuous now could be fatal in a world infested by zombies. Particularly a few years in, any medicine that hadn't already been taken and used would likely have expired and no longer be effective. Without new medicine being produced or vaccinations being administered, disease would become much more prevalent and would be more deadly. This problem would be further exacerbated by the limited amounts of cleaning supplies, which would lead to a buildup of dangerous bacteria. On that topic, a number of other supplies would eventually become unusable as well. After a couple years, most gasoline would be ineffective. As the years went on, batteries would begin to lose their charge, so flashlights, radios, computers, cars, and worst of all, Game Boys would be eventually unusable without an alternative source of power. Humanity would likely split into smaller groups like we see in Walking Dead. We would likely form groups similar to those of our ancestors in the Pleistocene era. This could actually be beneficial, since living closer to our evolutionary environment could have positive effects on human psychology. However, as I'm sure you know, humans tend to take group membership a bit too far, which would lead to infighting amongst various groups as seen in The Walking Dead. That said, all would not be lost. As stated in our video, How Could You Survive a Zombie Apocalypse? One very effective strategy would be to move to more secluded areas. In these places, like islands or difficult to access spots, zombies would have trouble getting there, particularly if defenses were put in place. This would allow people to rebuild and perhaps create a new society. But how can a new society come about in a world infested by zombies? Well, one thing that is often left out of zombie films and shows is the idea that the zombies would eventually dwindle in numbers, and even disappear completely. While there are a lot of them, if one or many groups of survivors manage to dig in and find an easily defensible area, they could very well systematically exterminate the zombie threat. Particularly on smaller islands, the number of zombies would be somewhat limited. Since they don't reproduce, if the survivors were careful not to allow themselves to turn and continued luring zombies to their death, there would eventually be no more left. This would actually be relatively easy, especially if the zombies were as slow and easily dealt with as they are in The Walking Dead. There's also a good chance that the military would play a large role in the extermination. One issue that some have with Walking Dead is the near complete lack of military presence. This seems rather unrealistic. If random civilians are able to survive, chances are a fair number of soldiers trained for combat would as well. This would greatly facilitate the extermination of the zombie menace, and would also help to keep order amongst the survivors. Military states would probably be the norm, only giving way to more democratic systems once the zombie problem was gone. However, even if all the zombies were exterminated, there would still be long-lasting effects. If the virus remained, people would forever need to be highly cautious. One accidental death within a compound could cause someone to turn and attack others, like we saw when a certain character got sick in a certain building, died in the showers, and turned a number of people. I'm trying to avoid spoilers. You're welcome. As long as the virus was in effect, survivors would need to be constantly vigilant, or Granny might kill the whole family after dying in her sleep. And now we return to our question, what if The Walking Dead was real? Well, death and disease would become far more prevalent, as medicine and cleaning supplies become harder and harder to come by. Humanity would likely find itself in smaller tribes similar to that of our evolutionary environment. If a group found a secluded or defensible area, they could potentially begin to rebuild a sort of society, and even begin exterminating the zombie menace. There would likely be a good deal of military support in this extermination, but even with the zombies gone, life for the survivors would likely never be the same. Thank you for watching Life's Biggest Questions. I hope this was interesting and informative, and maybe even inspired you to look into it further on your own. If you like this video, please thumbs up and subscribe to the channel down below. While you're down there, let me know what you would do if you woke up in the middle of a zombie apocalypse. Make sure to check out Top 10 Nerd if you're looking for more nerdy videos. Until next time, I'm Ron Mackenzie Lafergie with Life's Biggest Questions, wishing you the best of luck on your quest for answers.